Welcome to the Customer Wins podcast, where business leaders discuss their secrets and techniques for helping their customers succeed and in turn grow their business.
Hi, I'm Rich Walker, the host of the Customer Wins, where I talk to business leaders about how they help their customers win and how their focus on customer experience leads to growth. Today, I'm speaking with Adrian Johnstone, the president and co-founder of Practifi, a platform that helps wealth management firms go beyond traditional CRMs. Today's episode is brought to you by Quick, the leader in enterprise forms automation. If your sales process depends on filling out forms, especially when your data is already in a CRM, including Practifi, then you should be using Quick. We make filling out forms the easiest part of your transaction. Visit quickforms.com to get started. Before introducing today's guest, I want to give a big thank you to Tim Highland, who first introduced me to Adrian when he joined the Practifi team and just couldn't stop telling me how great it is to work there. So now I'd like to introduce you to Adrian. With over 3 decades in wealth management as a consultant and tech company founder, Adrian has seen and heard a lot. He's advised firms at the intersection of technology, client experience, and regulation, and cares deeply about helping firms run efficient and profitable businesses. As an Australian living and working in the US, Adrian has witnessed firsthand what happens when regulators overreach and the negative impact this has on investors, advisors, and ultimately the industry at large. Adrian, welcome to the Customer Wins.
Thanks, Rich. It's awesome to be here, and it's great to have people like Tim connect great people like you and I.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. I've been looking forward to talking to you about this. Now, if our listeners haven't heard this podcast before, I talk with business leaders about what they're doing to help their customers win, how they built and deliver a great customer experience, and how they grow their own company. So Adrian, I want to start by understanding your business a little better. How does your company help people?
So look, really in the kind of the core essence of it is we're the kind of the system of truth that orchestrates every client experience that you have. So whether it's preparing for a proposal or a pitch to a major new prospect that your firm has got, whether you're just answering a phone call, we're there to serve up the information to create actionable insights from the data you already have and to make it seamless for you to capture and then pass through that data from every other part in the process, including through to people like Quick.
Yeah, and I mean, it's incredible when we talk about forms. Forms are just one little tiny component of the overall business and the workflow. And your product is very robust. It manages a huge part of that workflow for wealth advisement firms, right?
Yeah, we take everything from the very first point where you've met someone at a social mixer or a golf club or wherever you've been, all the way through to running very complex multifamily office structures and understanding the intertwined entities and generations of families, including tracking and really comprehensively managing how everyone met and how everyone knows each other. Because of course, that network effect is actually what everyone in the firm spends all day, every day trying to manage.
Yeah, exactly. I remember when I started with my mentor in his business, his idea was, hey, Rich, I'll work with the clients I'm working with. You get their children. Let's get them all to work with us. And yeah. I know that is a fundamental challenge in wealth management business. It's really interesting that you guys are able to do that.
Yeah, look, we've heard about it for years, the intergenerational wealth transfer problem. And of course, there's any number of statistics about how the next generation will in huge percentages choose a different advisor. I think what people need to remember is that doesn't necessarily need to mean a different firm. It can be about getting ahead of that and introducing people to actively manage those relationships. So perhaps your mentor back when that kicked into play was doing this the right way around.
Right. So let's go back to the early days. I mean, you have a lot of experience in financial services, wealth management. Obviously, you saw some pain. Did the world need another CRM? Why did you do this? What made you want to do this?
I guess the contention would be, did the world or the wealth management world need a good one? if you want a contentious statement. Look, when we were putting the business together, the original concept was way back in 2011, and we kind of entered the market in 2013, 14. And no, the world didn't need another example of what a CRM was at that time. Too often they were, particularly in the more vertically oriented systems, they were little more than a Rolodex and a very basic log of tasks. And of course, business has evolved and the client experience and expectation has evolved, but those platforms didn't. At the opposite end of the spectrum, you had these huge platforms, the Salesforces and Microsofts of the world, that for pretty much anyone other than a mega enterprise, the total cost of ownership equation for those systems over time was just never going to make sense. And so what we wanted to do was really, to an extent, democratize enterprise-grade technology into the RAA space and its equivalents in the other markets that we operate in. We're 5 countries around the world, so everyone has a different acronym, but they all do the same thing.
Yeah, and that RIA space is it's a very diverse group, right? You've got a lot of solopreneurs, small offices, medium, large, and you have a product that actually spans that entire universe at a good price point with a high value.
Well, thank you. Yeah, look, what we're very conscious of is technology has to work for you. It's not the other way around. If you feel like you're battling it, then something's not right, and that needs addressing. And we know that particularly when a firm gets to being, a handful of advisors and their support staff, the complexities of running that business can really start to increase, whether it's compliance, whether it's the type of customers they're serving. And so once you get into that kind of 20, 30, 40, 50 people, you really need to run the business, not only talk to the clients. And maybe when you're a solopreneur, those lines are blurry. It's all one and the same thing. So we wanted to make sure that every role in the business, for every process in the business, for every piece of data in the business, had one central repository, just like you would see in a mega corp. Yeah.
So let's talk about running your business. You are a co-founder in it. How did you get your first customer?
Looked like pretty much most technology companies. We took some flashy PowerPoints and told people it was technology and convinced them to come on the journey. But for us, it was kind of it was an interesting inflection point. We were in Australia. We'd been talking to a lot of Australian firms and building some great interest, and there was a lot of unity around the problem that we wanted to solve. But actually our first client came to us out of New Zealand. They were just desperate for a solution, and they reached out and said, hey, you guys sound like you're doing something interesting. People keep talking about you. Can we fly over to Australia and see what you've built? So we of course said yes, and then we proceeded to try and take some of that PowerPoint and really turn it very rapidly into technology. So those first few customers, they're fantastic. They were fundamental and instrumental in the business becoming what it is, because they really guided the early product evolution.
Yeah, there's nothing more validating than a customer. And when they are seeking you out, that's just even better, especially in those early days. What size customer was it? Was it very entry level, or was it a major enterprise?
No, they were around, they were kind of I'm trying to think what they were when they started with us. They're like a 15, 20 person RAA equivalent out of New Zealand.
Yeah, that's good.
Heavy in insurance and retirement, as well as wealth advice.
Yeah. Okay. And what made you decide to come to the US? When was that decision made?
Why would you not? The decision to come to the US was actually made in the core design of the business. We took the decision early on that Australia is an incredibly complex market. It's the most regulated advice market in the world, but it's not a very large market. And so whilst it's an excellent research and development laboratory, and we love working with our clients in Australia, and we love bringing more on, it's never going to be a big enough market to realize the full potential of the business.
Sure.
We were incredibly fortunate again to be sought out by an incredibly wonderful US based executive who I won't name because I haven't asked for her permission. That she sought us out in Australia when she was down doing some business. And we were at the time pointed at the UK. We were doing the typically Australian thing and going from Australia to the UK and sticking in the Commonwealth where the rules are all a bit the same. And she was like, no, going the wrong direction. So we headed over to the US and kind of accelerated that plan. She made an introduction. That firm became our first client. They made an introduction. A few days later, the firm they introduced became our second client. And what was a discovery tour with a few meet and greets became the founding of a business where we had clients.
Nice.
And those early clients were incredibly inspirational in that they were even willing to sign our Australian agreement on the promise that we would repaper them once we had a US entity.
That's great. That says a lot about the rapport you were building and the trust you were building with those clients. Adrian, tell us a story about one of your favorite customer successes. Like, how did you help them win? What was their outcome? How did you transform them with your products and services?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many. It's a little bit like doing an awards ceremony speech, and you think, did I thank everyone? And the answer is you can't. So to all of our clients who eventually tune into this, we love all of you. But one that really sticks in my mind is a firm in California called EP Wealth. They moved to Practifi, and they've really, really excelled at making the most of technology, of actually really driving adoption, of really pushing the envelope in what's possible. And in turn, they're now a very highly acquisitive, rapidly growing firm. They're more than triple the size they were when they started with us back in 2018. So their growth has been phenomenal. And we've had feedback from them in the past that it was actually bringing in and standardizing and getting the efficiency gains that they got out of Practifi that enabled them, obviously, as well as capital and capable people. But that's what really enabled them to accelerate their growth, was that they could feel comfortable that the technology that they had selected could grow with them. They no longer had a scale problem. They didn't need to keep considering, are we going to outgrow this system or this system or this system? So whenever I'm sitting there and thinking, who's the poster child for who's using Practifi the best across the world, it would be the team at EP Wealth. Yeah,
nice. I feel that most companies that are growing are also focused on excellent customer experiences for their customers and clients. How do you feel that your product has enabled their customer experience to be improved and therefore get those efficiencies out to their end clients? Does it have that impact?
Yeah, incredibly so. And in fact, it's one of those questions that often comes up. Why did you start Practifi? Was it a technology problem you wanted to solve? And my background before Practifi was as a consultant in the same industry space. And my reason for founding my consultancy flowed through into becoming a founder in Practifi, which is I have a deep interest in making sure that end investors win. Because if the wealth advisor is helping an end investor's experience go up and their outcomes improve, then those people are spending more, employing more, doing those things, and all boats rise. And I see the role of an advisor as being fundamental to lifting the breadth of wealth across the globe. And so for me, it was very informative to say, well, when we bring in a piece of technology, how are we making that experience better? What are we doing to enable an advisor to deliver a better experience so that trust in their service goes up and there's more referral? But how are we also enabling them to genuinely improve that outcome? And we do that by making them more efficient, and they can work on the things that add the highest value and not have to battle the technology. And so from everything from the way that we design the user interface to the types of integrations that we do, or the automation that we bring in within the platform, or the data insights that we serve up, all of them are designed to either free the time of the team to focus on the client experience, or to more directly impact that client outcome, that end investor outcome. And so we do that. Of course, we're not talking to the end investor. So we do that by working through the firm to give them the tools to do that better.
That's awesome. One of the things that happens to entrepreneurs and founders is this journey of building your company causes you to go through a lot of change. So in helping your customers win, how did you personally change, or did it impact your product design, and did you pivot, or even your entire company, maybe your company culture changed? What changed during this time period?
So much. And being an entrepreneur, I mean, if it's not changing, it's dead. It's
right.
Just like that's just life. But that's such an excellent question, Rich. There's so many ways to answer it. But when we first came to the US, there was an expectation that we would follow a pattern that was the same pattern that pretty much every technology company follows when it enters a new market. Spend big on marketing, hire a bunch of salespeople, promise the world, and hope for the best. And that's we had learned through my years of consulting and the experience that I was just talking about with what we want to achieve, that's the wrong way around. So actually, we're informed by our clients in that we run Practifi kind of a lot like you would run a multifamily office. We think of our clients as the client families. And so when we entered the US, we actually hired client success people before salespeople and technical people, and invested. We didn't invest in marketing for ages. So for us, it was all about client success, because that's the model that our clients deliver to their investors. And we want to make sure that the experience that they value, if you're a firm who wants to give a white glove experience to your investors, and that interpersonal relationship and that level of servicing is what you think is important enough to give your clients, then your technology partner, and it's really fundamental there, we want to be a partner to their business, not a provider to it. It's really fundamental that they should match that level of service to you. And that, it's interesting, some of those early clients, that was one of the biggest standouts. Yes, we solved a great technical problem, but actually they just wanted to do business with us. We're very fortunate that today that continues to be the case. There are many within our client groups that many of our team would count as friends. We've had lots of baby photos and wedding photos and all those kind of things over the years, where we really want to be a part of their business and help drive their outcome.
What an incredibly good way to put that. In marketing, you try to understand the persona of the type of customer you're working with. You try to identify their ideal customer. You try to understand how to talk to them, how to work with them so that they want to work with you. And what you've just said also says you have to be like them yourself. You can't just be a vendor. You got to be like them so they feel like they're working with you as part of their own team. I love that.
Yeah, it rings very hollow if you look and you say, well, this person is, this persona type, and therefore their buying triggers are these. I'm a firm believer that being empathetic, because, Rich, you're an entrepreneur, we don't always get it right.
No.
Technology companies fail all the time. We do the wrong thing, we break stuff, we don't deliver exactly what we said we would when we said we would. And all of those things are true, of course, in an advice firm. There are commitments made to clients that are missed. There are meetings that slip. There's account openings that got delayed because someone forgot. And all those kind of things happen. And if you've built a partnership, then yes, the emotions will run high at different points in time, but you can always fall back to the partnership. You can come back and say, do we have a shared objective here? And if the
Right.
answer is yes, then all those things, it's a relationship. All those things will come and go.
Yeah.
If you're a vendor and your answer is, well, the contract says I'll do this and I did. And there's a clause here in the contract that says maybe I won't. And this time I didn't, sorry. Then it's going to be a fairly short relationship. And unfortunately, I think for the industry, they've had that experience from too many vendors for too long. And so we want to be really part of that change journey that says expectations should be changed. I say it every time I get on a stage. So if the expectations that you have of your technology providers is that they're just a provider and they're not a part of your business, then you need to change providers. You need to step back and think, I'm sitting around a table, all of the core information to my business, my client experience, everything I know about my clients is locked in a piece of technology. If I don't like the people I'm doing business with, that's a problem.
Yeah, I can't agree more. It's all about partnership. It's about the ability to have a conversation when things are tough. That, to me, that is actually the definition of strength, is how you go through a difficult situation. Hey, I want to switch gears really quickly here, and I don't want to open too big a can of worms, but I know many tech founders like yourself and myself are very interested in AI, artificial intelligence, and how it's going to start transforming things. So I'm really curious, how do you think AI is going to affect your product, your customer experience, and maybe even the industry in the next 1 to 2 years?
Look, it's a really interesting space, and it is a can of worms. I don't think there's any way of touching into it without ripping the top off that. But for me, it's an interesting one because there's so many points where people think of it, and getting a common understanding of people of what are we actually talking about. Are we talking about chatbots? Are we talking about sentiment analysis and predictive insights? Where are we on the spectrum of things here? And so I guess for us, we're all about human interaction. We're all about enabling the client experience from advisor to client. I've been on the record many times saying that algorithmic advice or robo advice or whatever you want to call it, it's a great modeling calculator, but the end investor ultimately, in most instances, still wants to look someone in the eye and say, is this a good idea? And so the role of the advisor is fundamental. So for me, I think where AI is likely to play a role is looking across big sets of data and helping firms to understand some of those elements of client relationships that maybe do work well for them, and to see the signs of ones that don't. It's things like doing predictive analysis for churn. Where might you lose a key client relationship? What are the upstream indicators that's coming along? Services like chat and those sorts of things. From our technology perspective, I see a great role for them in the industry. From a Practifi perspective, that's just going to be a piece of data that gets written into the system. So it doesn't change our world very much. Perhaps we'll deliver one, but it doesn't really change much. For me, it's all about the actionable insights that we can bring through that data. There's a lot of power there. There's a lot of industry and regulatory question to get over there first. Those big engines are owned by the likes of Google and Microsoft. How happy is everyone to punch all that data out into that and have that world looking at it? What are the regulatory pitfalls that are there? Of course, you can build it and do smaller scale executions, but then you've got to feed it and teach it. And I've used the analogy in years past as people are like, oh, hey, I was going to run my business in 2 years' time. And I said, right, so you're happy for a toddler to run your business. In 2 years' time, you don't have enough data points to have fed it to have it run your business. You've got to think upstream of that. And so for us right now in our business, it's a lot about how do we help clients capture enough data such that when that capability is there and the use cases are clear and the regulatory runway for them is very clear, that the data is already in place so that it can work.
Yeah, and you also have to consider all the security requirements. We're talking about people's data.
Yeah.
So it's a lot for tech firms and wealth management service providers like yourself to think through. So I appreciate you telling me about that. So we're getting close to the end here, and I have a couple more questions. First is, given 3 decades of experience and founding a tech company and serving so many different clients, is there a secret that you have found or a key lesson that you want to share with other business leaders to help them win more customers?
Look, I don't think any of it's a secret. I don't think I'm smart enough to have found some secret that no one else is, no one else has stumbled across. But I think for anyone, it's one of those things that we already talked about. It's just be human. Understand that you will get it wrong. Be empathetic. Walk a mile in your client's shoes, and don't be defensive about the fact that, well, my system couldn't possibly have done that wrong. Quite probably it did, but some of the time the user will have also done it wrong, and getting in a debate about it is unhelpful. So for me, I think the key is understand that the people that you're doing business with you're in partnership with them, and build a rapport and a relationship so that the hard times just become a part of the relationship over time.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. So before I ask my very last question, it's kind of a question still, but how can people connect with you? Like a website? How should they reach out to you if they want to meet you?
If I did anything other than say go to the website, my marketing team would absolutely crucify me. So please go to the website. But of course, all of the social media platforms are there. I'm there on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people. To me, we're in a people business. I was asked. I was in actually a prospect call yesterday, and I was chatting with the team afterwards, and I said, when I fill in a form, I fly a lot, and you're always filling in some form of entry card as you cross a border. And when you're doing those things, and it's like, what's your role, or what industry do you work in, and all those sorts of things. And I never pick technology when I pick what industry I work in. I always pick financial services or wealth if it's an option, because I think we have to see ourselves as a part of the industry. So for me, it's go to the website, see that, understand us as part of your world rather than someone who is sitting separate to it.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel the same actually, because I was a financial advisor. So I still feel like I'm in wealth management regardless of what my actual day-to-day work is.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my last question to wrap this up. Who is a leader that you're following or being inspired by?
Yeah, look, it's again, it's such a big sea, and I know you gave me a heads up on this just before we kicked off, and my brain's been kind of running away on it. I'm not a one person kind of a guy. I'm not a zealot who looks at a particular presenter or a particular leader and thinks that's amazing. So there are lots of leaders and lots of leadership attributes that I like. It's easy to look at what's happening in Ukraine and be inspired by genuine leadership in adversity in that scenario. But I think closer to home for me, it's actually this will be kind of maybe slightly controversial for some, but it's looking at our investors. I'm inspired by our board representatives because they are making such difficult calls all the time across a portfolio of companies. And when I look at what's happening in capital markets at the moment, and the tech space more broadly, that's a lot to juggle. And so, I'm incredibly inspired by their ability to look through all of the noise. I think as an entrepreneur, that's difficult at times. There's so much noise in your face. How do you look through it? So I'm actually turning to those people at the moment and saying, help me understand how you look through that plane and keep an eye on the longer size.
Yeah, that's great. Adrian, thank you so much. So I want to thank Adrian, president of Practifi, for being on today's episode of The Customer Wins. Go check out Practifi's website at practifi.com. And don't forget to check out Quick at quickforms.com, where we take the work out of paperwork. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion, and will click the like button, share this with someone, and subscribe to our channels for future episodes of The Customer Wins. Thank you for joining me today, Adrian.
Thanks, Rich. It's an absolute pleasure. I think we should do this again with a bottle of wine.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Customer Wins podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.